Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a journey back in time, way back, to a period often called the Dark Ages, but was it really all that dark? Let's find out as we explore the Middle Ages, an era of knights, castles, plagues, and profound change that shaped the world we live in today. So, grab your metaphorical torch, and let's dive into the thousand-year story from serfs to sovereigns. The story begins around the year 476 AD with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Imagine a world where the superpower that held everything together for centuries just collapses, roads fall into disrepair, trade networks crumble, and cities shrink. Europe fragments into a patchwork of smaller, often warring, kingdoms ruled by Germanic tribes like the Franks, Visigoths, and Anglo-Saxons. This early period, from about the 5th to the 10th century, is what historians often call the early Middle Ages. Life for the average person was tough, no doubt about it. Most people were peasants, living in small villages and working the land. And this is where we meet the concept of feudalism. Think of it as a giant social pyramid. At the very top was the king, who technically owned all the land. But he couldn't manage it all himself, so he granted large chunks of it, called fiefs, to powerful nobles, dukes, earls, and barons. In exchange for the land, these nobles pledged their loyalty and military service to the king. They became his vassals. These nobles, in turn, needed people to protect their land and fight for them. So they granted smaller parcels of their land to knights. Knights were the elite warrior class of the Middle Ages, bound by a code of chivalry. They promised to fight for their lord, and in return, they got land and the means to support themselves, their armor, and their war horses. And at the very bottom of this pyramid, the serfs. Serfs weren't slaves, they couldn't be bought or sold. But they weren't free either, they were tied to the land they worked. They couldn't leave the manor without the lord's permission, and they owed him a significant portion of their crops and labor. In return, the lord offered them protection from bandits and rival lords. It was a system built on mutual obligation, a fragile kind of security in a dangerous world. Now, while the political structure was fragmented, there was one institution that united almost all of Western Europe, the Catholic Church. The Church was the spiritual heart of medieval society. Its influence was immense. The Pope, in Rome, held enormous power, sometimes even more than kings. Cathedrals and monasteries were the centers of learning and art. Monks painstakingly copied ancient texts by hand, preserving the knowledge of Greece and Rome that might otherwise have been lost forever. The church calendar dictated the rhythm of life, from daily prayers to yearly festivals. For people living in a harsh and uncertain world, faith offered comfort, meaning, and the promise of a better life in the hereafter. As we move into the High Middle Ages, roughly from the 11th to the 13th century, things start to change. Europe's population begins to boom. Why? Partly because of a period of warmer weather, which led to better harvests. New agricultural techniques also helped, like the heavy plow, which could turn the dense soils of northern Europe, and the three-field system of crop rotation, which made farming more productive. More food meant more people, and this had a ripple effect across society. With a growing population, towns and cities started to make a comeback. Merchants and artisans, weavers, blacksmiths, bakers formed guilds to regulate their trades and protect their interests. Trade routes reopened, connecting Europe once again to the riches of the East. Cities like Venice and Genoa became maritime powerhouses, their ships carrying spices, silks, and other luxury goods. A new class of people emerged, the bourgeoisie, or the middle class, whose wealth came not from land, but from trade and commerce. This new class began to challenge the old feudal order. This was also the age of great cathedral building. Gothic architecture, with its soaring arches, ribbed vaults, and stunning stained glass windows, reached for the heavens, a testament to both faith and human ingenuity. Universities were founded in places like Bologna, Paris, and Oxford, becoming new centers of thought and debate. But this period of growth and confidence was also marked by intense conflict. I'm talking, of course, about the Crusades. Beginning in 1095, a series of holy wars were launched by European Christians with the stated goal of reclaiming Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim rule. While the Crusades had a profound impact, sparking trade and cultural exchange, they were also brutal conflicts that left a legacy of bitterness and mistrust between the Christian and Islamic worlds that would last for centuries. Then, just as medieval civilization seemed to be at its peak, disaster struck. In the mid-14th century, the Black Death swept across Europe. Carried by fleas on rats that traveled along the trade routes, this devastating plague wiped out an estimated 1/3 to 1/2 of the continent's population. Imagine entire villages disappearing, cities losing half their residents in a matter of months. The social and economic consequences were catastrophic. But crises can also be catalysts for change. With so many people gone, labor became scarce. The surviving peasants and workers found themselves in a much stronger bargaining position. They could demand higher wages and better conditions. The old bonds of serfdom began to break down. The plague shook people's faith in the old institutions, including both the church and the feudal lords who couldn't protect them. It accelerated the decline of the feudal system. The late Middle Ages, from the 14th to the 15th century, was a time of turmoil, but also of transformation. It saw the 100 Years' War between England and France, a conflict that helped forge new national identities. It also saw the rise of powerful, centralized monarchies. Kings began to consolidate their power, creating professional armies loyal only to them, funded by new systems of taxation. They no longer had to rely solely on their feudal vassals. Sovereigns with true national power were beginning to replace the fragmented authority of the feudal lords. By the end of the 15th century, the world looked very different. The invention of the printing press by Gutenberg in the 1450s revolutionized communication, making knowledge more accessible than ever before. Explorers like Columbus were on the verge of sailing across the Atlantic, opening up a new world. Artists and thinkers were rediscovering the classical world, sparking the intellectual and cultural explosion we call the Renaissance. The Middle Ages were drawing to a close. So, were they the Dark Ages? Well, it's complicated. For the serf tied to the land, life was certainly hard and limited. But it was also an era of incredible creativity, profound faith, and dynamic change. It gave us universities, cathedrals, the seeds of modern law, and the foundations of the nations we know today. It was a bridge between the ancient world and the modern one, a complex and fascinating period that laid the groundwork for everything that came after. From the humble serf working the fields to the powerful sovereign building a nation, the Middle Ages is a story of how our world was made. Thanks for watching, everyone. What part of the Middle Ages do you find most fascinating? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more historical deep dives. See you next time.